but they really don't really know what I'm really battling with. They don't really necessarily know my real struggles, my real fights, my real wars that I have when I'm alone and I'm laying in bed and I'm having to face with choices and the pressure of the culture and the community. A lot of times we just go through these things called life. And it's real easy to put on the social and the emotional mask, the fake faces, the fake smiles. It's really easy to go through life and just kind of keep everybody at an arm's reach distance. See, this is my journey. I always say this, guys. My name's Nate Harm, but really that doesn't matter. I always say it this way, though. My story, your story, it's just the story. It's the story of people, young and old, trying to figure out who we are and what we want to achieve and what's our identity. And God, are you real? And I know that I was kind of raised maybe knowing who God is, but do I really know him? And truthfully, there's the pressure of the culture of wanting to fit in with groups and crowds and cliques of people. And so much that I'm just, it's like these storms of life, and there's all of these ways that I can turn. And then I also just got to be honest about who I am sometimes. See, today, what I want to just get in and talk about is just that, man. Your story, my story, it's the story. And especially now in a culture where there's so many uncertainties. In the last 5 to 6 months, the world has been turned upside down. And a lot of us had to learn to pivot and to navigate life so quickly without us even knowing really what this is. And there's a social distancing thing that we have to do. But it's a challenge because we need each other. See, guys, today what I want to talk to you all about is just life. And it's not just life, it's hopefully that I can encourage you to know this one thing, that you plus God will always be the majority, that when you're walking a life with him, when you're trusting him, when you're allowing your life to be influenced by him, you will never, ever have a more satisfied, purpose-driven life in your life. But I want to get real with y'all. See, I'm from Indiana, and we've had the opportunity to travel a lot. But my story wasn't always just traveling and always walking in my full understanding and just chasing after God. I remember when I was a young kid, man, that I had a lot of storms that I had to wrestle with. I had a lot of challenges that I had to navigate. And here's the thing, y'all. I know sometimes we want to keep people at an arm's distance, as in we don't trust sometimes, and we feel like we've got to put on this fake face, this fake attitude, these fake smiles. Before the whole time of the pandemic and us having to wear physical masks now, I used to always tell everybody to take off their mask, like the social and the emotional mask, the fake face, the fake smile, where everything on the surface looks so picture perfect. But behind the mask, deep down inside of us, sometimes we would be screaming for worth and for purpose. We would be shouting, but yet we would be silent. See, I'm from a place called Marion, Indiana. I was raised in a family of 4, mom, dad, sister, and me. And my dad, he was my rock star. He was my hero. He was my icon. I looked up to my father. He was like this perfect role model. And I was, as a young man, I was naive enough to probably think that I had a picture-perfect family. My parents never fought in front of me. They never argued in front of me. Maybe I'm just naive, but truthfully, I thought I had a perfect family. And my dad was my hero. But see, I've learned in all of our lives, there are things that I call moments of impact. Every single one of you in here, young and old, you will have a time in your life when you will have these moments of impact. And I would guess some of you, most of you, if not all of you, have actually already experienced a moment of impact. And what I mean by that, there are these unique situations. They can be good or they can be bad. But there are these events that happen in our lives when something happens that you can remember every single detail. You remember the people that were around you. You remember like what you were wearing. Moments of impact come from maybe giant emotional success stories like winning a championship, acing a test that you worked so hard, a vacation that you went with your family. But also these moments of impact, they can come through hardships and challenges, broken families, loss of friends and family to a sickness, loss of friends and family to cancer, life sometimes, right? Sometimes it's mom and dad getting divorced, or life just brings us all kinds of these rhythms. And for all of us, I bet if you sat back and you thought in your life about something that's happened in your life, that even to this day, it could have been last year, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever that thing is that happened to you, you still today remember every detail about it. For me, I had a huge moment of impact when I was in about the 5th going into the 6th grade. My parents called a family meeting. Now, family meetings to me were normally an amazing, exciting, awesome time because my dad used to love to have family meetings to give us some kind of breaking news about a family vacation, or maybe we're going to go do some school shopping for clothes. He used to love to get the family together at the kitchen table to tell us some great event that we were about to get to do. So mom and dad called a family meeting. I was excited. I remember though, when I walked in, things were going to be a little bit different, but I remember every single detail. My dad was to my right, my mom across from me, my sister to my left. My back was to the sink and to the stove and to the fridge. I remember the living room where the TV was, the wooden table. My dad had built this table. I hated the table though, because we moved a lot, and that table was extremely heavy, and he never got a moving crew. He got Nate. I remember the decorations on the kitchen walls, the ugliest, most hideous ceramic pieces of archaic faded fruit. My kitchen was ugly, y'all, but I remember it all because mom looked at dad and dad looked at me, and my dad began to say things that rocked my world. Nikki, Nathan, we need to talk to you. Things haven't been the greatest, and I know you don't have really a clue about it, but things are about to change because your mom and I were going to separate. I believe that we're going to have to continue on this journey of life, and we're going to separate as a family, and I'm going to move out. And it blindsided me because growing up, I never saw my parents fight in front of me. We were raised in a Christian family. We would go to church. We were raised in like what we would call just the normal Christian experience as a young person. And my life seemed like it was picture perfect. My parents never fought in front of me. What do you mean we're about to have a divorce and a separation? Like, you guys don't fight. The truth is though, growing up as a young man, I was never allowed in my parents' bedroom. They always said, Nikki, Nathan, listen, because I'm like a squirrel. I was 120%, 120 times, like go, go, go. And I would stress a lot of people out when I was a kid. I broke everything. And so my parents had always said like the bedroom was kind of off limit. It was a place for them to kind of like woosah and turn us off and have some peace and quiet. But the truth is, growing up as a young man, behind the bedroom door was where the verbal, the mental, the emotional abuse happened. Behind the bedroom door was the drugs and the alcohol happened. And as I began to ask questions, as my dad was ripped out of my life, I remember I began to believe like my parents had lied to me and all of these things. And I became angry. And I remember I looked at my dad and I said, I'm never going to be like you. I mean, he was my hero. But now I felt like my life was built on a house of lies. And I was going to church and in Jesus and God, if you're so real and there's mercy and there's grace and like following you is such a good, like fulfilling life, like why is this happening? But there was something that I learned to do really well watching my parents. I learned to do what they did, and that was put on the fake face, the fake smile. I learned to act like everything was okay, but behind the mask of my smiles, the social and the emotional mask, I would be screaming, but I would be silent. And I just began to develop a habit like they did. Like I wouldn't let anybody in because I didn't trust anybody. The truth is, young and old alike, listen to me. Every single one of us, it's a rhythm of life. We were all born to live in connection and in community. We all want to feel like we're a part of something, but sometimes we go through things and we get hurt and there's wounds and we let our mind and we let our brain and we let our life begin to develop these new habits of protection where I won't let you in because I don't trust you. And it's easier to keep you at an arm's distance. And for me, that began to be my journey. I ran from God. Jesus, you can't be that good because my parents are divorced. And what began to happen in my journey from a young age, I began to walk away from healthy peer circles, from healthy peer groups. I say this in every school that I go to. Who you surround yourself with matters. And the truth of the matter is, I don't need you to tell me who you are. Let me spend some time with you and let me see who you rip and who you run with. Let me see who your peer groups and your friends are. I don't need you to tell me who you are. I can tell you who you are by who you hang out with. Because our friends matter. Who we surround ourselves with matters. And when I was a young kid growing up, I had healthy friends. I had students and friends and youth groups and these people that could encourage me and that could speak life into me. But as I began to go through life and I was faced with adversities and challenges in front of me, and I began to walk away from this whole Christian Jesus thing because I had attached my hurts and my pains and I blamed it on him. And so let's be real, peer pressure, it's a real thing. We act like it's not, but let's be real. So many of us, young and old, regardless of who we are, we care so much about the opinions of the people around us. We want to fit in with groups and crowds and cliques of people. We want to feel like we matter, we belong. We have this thing called pressure. And for me, my life, it began to spiral out of control, guys. When I was in middle school, I began to walk away from healthy peer groups. I began to create this level of protection where I wouldn't open up and be real about my hurts and my pains. I created these rhythms and these habits that I thought were going to keep me safe. But truthfully, it was the number one thing that began to hold me hostage. Guys, listen to me. Your connection is the most powerful thing that we need. And I know that's super challenging right now, especially in the atmosphere in the world that we live in. And I know we've been hearing the word social distancing over and over and over, but from my mouth to your ears, we need to be physically a little distant, but we've got to stay socially connected, because community and people and surrounding ourselves is the most important, one of the most valuable tools that we have, because we as a community, as a group, we need each other, because no one in here is an island. We're not supposed to have to do this thing on our own. You know what? Because I won't see my blind spots. I won't always be able to be honest with some of the stuff that I'm going in. It's easy for me to suppress it and to bury it below the surface. And I think that I'm keeping myself safe and protected. But it's the way the enemy tries to isolate me. And so even though right now we've got our norms a little bit different, we've got to be intentional with our intention to stay socially connected with each other, because honestly, we need each other. See, I didn't always know this though. When I was a middle school student, I had straight A's before I began to go through a lot of storms and struggles and challenges. And then I turned from straight A's to straight F's. I remember being a young man who had the world by the palm of his hands to being a young man that literally started getting involved with bad peer groups and circles. And I wore this mask socially and emotionally. And man, the enemy began to war on my mind, and I started looking to the world for my identity and my worth. And next thing you know, thoughts of wanting to give up, self-image, self-harming. Like when I was in school, guys, literally my life, it became a train wreck, because I stopped trusting like that people were in my life to help me, and I had to find the courage to take off the social and the emotional mask and to use each other. And I isolated. And I know even us here, that some of us that we see the pressure of what it is to maybe be a young Christian kid that's supposed to kind of like trust God and lean on God, but that we still have these whispers sometimes that we're not enough. And sometimes even in our own circles, we may be battling thoughts of giving up, and we wrestle with some of these things that we're seeing, that how the world's coping with their struggles. Listen to me. You are not unusual or strange or different trying to navigate this thing called life. Mental health is so important, even for the Christian community. And you need to understand deep down inside of you that it's okay to not be okay. and that it's okay to sometimes have emotions and feelings that aren't the easiest to talk about. But here's what I want you to know. It's not okay for you just to stay that way, because you need to know something. Every single person, like it, love it, or leave it, we've all got stuff. And I'm beautifully broken, and you're beautifully broken, and we're beautifully broken, but we're better together. And that truthfully, your relationship with God and you beginning to say, God, I need your help. I'm facing some challenges. I'm navigating this thing called life. I have so many uncertainties. I feel the pressure. I don't know where to turn. That's why the Word of God, I love what you all just did here. That allegiance to the Bible, that Bible has every answer. That Bible has every single thing you need to know about the rhythms of life. I had to learn it the hard way, guys. I could go on for hours about the mistakes. I mean, literally my life, I've learned from the streets of hard knocks. And what I can learn through all of this is, man, that if I would have just got to a place of surrender, and if I would have realized the mask was the biggest lie, and I'm not talking about the physical, I'm talking about the social and the emotional. The enemy wanted to isolate me, and so I would never be able to navigate this thing called life and to thrive and to reach my full potential, because we are a body of people, and we've got to understand we are better together. See, it's like a ladder. In my whole journey, guys, I mean, it's been unbelievable of some of my mistakes and my hurts and my pains, but I got to a place in my life when I stopped running from God. Like, God met me in one of the most amazing, unbelievable ways. And I don't have time to get into the whole thing today. We've got videos on YouTube and all kinds of the whole story of the struggle where God intersected in my life. This is what I want you to know. You're not the exception. And what I mean by that, sometimes you can see people on TV or on social media or read books or see these amazing stories where God shows up and shows out, and it's like mind blow, and you're like, God did it for them, and I hear a cool story over there, but he can't do it for me. No, you are not the exception. God can, will, and desires to meet you, to lead you, to guide you, to continue. You just got to keep moving forward. There's no going back. You got to keep talking, and there's no dumb question to God. God, I don't understand this. God, I need help here. God, I need some understanding there. Like, there's no question that's too big or too complicated, but you've got to stay in contention for the content to ask the questions, because God will speak if you slow down and just listen. You've got to keep moving, but you can't do it alone. You see, I battled so long because I put on this layer of protection when I wouldn't let you in. And it got to a place where I had hit rock bottom, where finally I said, God, I'm done running. And that's when he began to show me so much who he is, and that truthfully, you plus him will always be the majority. When you live a life that's Jesus over everything, I promise you, those scriptures that they will be the head and not the tail, like, that's legit. Or he will make a table in the presence of your enemy. You know what the number one enemy's tool is? Fear. So what that means is that God will make a table in the midst of all of your fears and show you how real he is. You've got to just keep trusting and talking and going. I'm here to tell all of you right now, having a relationship with God, pursuing this thing called Jesus, is the most unbelievable, amazing, challenging, but exciting life you can ever have. And he's so real. And you just got to keep trusting, but you can't do it on your own. You're not supposed to. You got to have what I call horizontal and vertical relationships. Because see, here's the thing, life It's like ladders, right? Like up here's who God's called you to be, your identity, your destiny. Like this ladder is your journey. Like this is like being the teacher, the doctor, the athlete. Up here's the person that's going to write the book. Up here's the person that's going to have a family. But it's not the top rung, it's the whole journey. Like this thing, it's called ladders of life. But you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And for so long, I tried to do it on my own, and I wouldn't let anybody in, and I cut everybody off, and I refused to open up. I allowed fear to wrap around me, because if I talk about my struggle, what will they think about me? If I talk about my pain, what will be their idea of me? I felt all of this, and I had to get to a place where I started punching fear in the face, where I realized that fear is the trick of the enemy. You know how I live my life right now? I live my life, and God literally has been blowing my mind. Whenever I feel fear, I run right at it, because fear is of the enemy that tries to keep me from my purpose. And so when I have big choices, and I'm not talking about the natural fear, like the fear of the Lord, where like, hey, don't walk down the alley, that's not safe. I'm not talking about punch that fear in the face. You have those things that you know that God's saying, hey, don't do that, stupid, that's not good for you, right? Like, hey, don't make that choice, right? I'm talking about fears that you know is the fear of failure, the fear of your worth, the fear of your purpose. Whenever I feel those fears, I thank so much the enemy for being dumb enough to make me feel that fear, because that's now my beacon of I'm going right at that thing, because on the other side of that fear is God's destiny for me. The enemy operates in fear, but God's perfect love casts out all fear. And so when it says that in Psalm that he will put a table in the midst of my enemies, I know the enemy's number one tactic is fear. So whenever I feel that fear and I sit at that table and I understood that, hey, you silly, dumb enemy, let me feel the fear so I can turn right at you, and I'm going to run at it, I'm going to run through it, but I'm not going to do it on my own, because we as a community, as a body, need each other. Ladders of life. From my young childhood, all the way to my teens, all the way to my early 20s. And guys, I didn't knock and figure out this, and I haven't figured it out yet still until I was 23 years old. Like, I made so many mistakes. I turned left, but I should have turned right. Like, I could talk to you for hours about what not to do, but I really want to talk to you about what to do. And that is trust God, turn towards God, lean on God's word, and lean on the people that are constantly speaking life over you and through you. Because all of us have this thing called ladders of life. This ladder is it's your journey, it's your story, it's your destiny. And I try to do it on my own, and I would climb and I would mess up, and I would get to a place where I'd be afraid because I've never been here before, and I don't know where to turn, and I don't know where to go, and I would fall. Like, this is your journey. But we try to do it on our own, and we get to a place, and then sometimes we get angry and we want to walk away from it. And you're like, I see God move there, and I've heard God do that, but I don't feel it. That's why you got to understand, you're not supposed to do this on our own. Being a person, as a believer, or even somebody who's not a believer, right? Like, I don't force my faith on anybody. But life in humanity, we're not supposed to do it on our own. We need each other. And I've realized two factors that govern my life. It's called transparency and accountability. See, really, I hit rock bottom, and I looked in the mirror one day, and I had wrote these words, change the world. And I was 23 years old, and I slapped them on a bathroom mirror. Truthfully, I was in a place, I was in prison at the time. Like, the story goes crazy, y'all. And I looked at this mirror, and I had so many mistakes in my past. And I wrote these words, change the world. But I realized that if I wanted to change things, I had to start changing how I operated, because insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking I'm going to get a different outcome. And so the first thing that I did that began to change my life, literally since 2002, Since 2009, 11 years now, God has taken somebody who isn't qualified, who has really not the credentials, and he has allowed me to travel the world, put me in places that I've never probably would have ever been able to get there on my own. Like, I found purpose, I found peace. I've realized that following Jesus is the most amazing life ever. There was no going back. I was moving forward, but I couldn't do it on my own. I had to begin to trust the people around me that God had brought into my life. And so the first thing that I did, though, when I was all alone, I got to a place where I decided to take off the social and the emotional mask, and I stopped caring about what others thought about me. And I call it transparency. There are 5 areas that are biblical, 5 areas that are practical, 5 areas that are just rhythms of life. Transparency, accountability, hard work, make good choices, and value people. I live my life with these 5. Transparency, accountability, hard work, good choices, and value people. But step 1 was becoming transparent, taking off the social and the emotional mask and opening up about my hurts and my pains, being real with myself. And that place of transparency, man, it changed everything. Because when I found the courage to start to speak up and to speak out, when I found the courage to open up and to let people invade my space, I was super uncomfortable. But I realized the reason I didn't like talking about my stuff, and I would stay so busy, and it would be go, 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 go. Because if I slowed down and had taken the time to think about my stuff, I couldn't deal with it. So I always continued to push it down farther and farther. But transparency, taking off the social, the emotional mask, and talking about your stuff with friends or counselors or people, it changed everything. Not just because I was talking to them and they were going to give me some unbelievable words of wisdom and mind blow, and man, the light bulb would go off. This is the power of transparency and communicating. You see, you as a human being, your ingenuity and your individual ability to problem solve is next to none. The human race, man, we as people have the ability to figure stuff out. But every good math teacher will tell you, step 1 of solving a problem is identifying the problem. And for some of us, we don't want to face our problem, and we don't want to be honest, and we don't want to be transparent. And so when I started talking about my stuff with the people around me, it wasn't that they were going to give me the greatest words of advice. They could encourage me, but I was also starting to talk about my stuff. And I was talking about it, and I was beginning to process it. And I was just as much as I was talking to them, I was talking to myself. And when I began to take off the mask socially and emotionally, you know what it did? It encouraged the people around me to say, Nathan, I've struggled with that too. Nathan, I've had those same questions too. Nathan, I felt that way too. And when I began to realize transparency, vulnerability, living a life that's kind of see-through, where I didn't care about the people's opinions about me anymore, it was also creating an atmosphere where people found the courage to talk. And as they began talking to me, I began realizing all people like it, love it, or leave it. I don't care your age. I don't care the ethnicity. I don't care where you're from in the world. All people are beautifully broken some way, somehow. We've all got stuff, but we're better together. And the more that I found the ability to take off that social and emotional mask and open up, man, it began to give me this piece of purpose that it's okay to not be okay. And that brought me to a place of accountability. Transparency and accountability go hand in hand. See, when I started talking and opening up with the people around me, they began to be these anchors of accountability. And I used to think accountability was this. Someone's going to tell on me. Someone's going to write me up. Someone's going to report me. Someone's going to fire me. Accountability, it was always like a cringe where like, I don't really want to be accountable. Like someone's watching you to get you in trouble. That's not what accountability is. See, when you take off that mask and begin allowing people to live life with you, they can't change you. Nobody can make you change. But let's be real. All of us in here, we probably have areas in our life that we know we want to be better at, we should be better at. But you know why nothing changes? Because change is extremely uncomfortable. So we always run back to being what we've always been. But when I began to realize that community and using the body of people and being honest with my feelings and my struggles, those people that God would use would be anchors in my life. They can't change me. They can't make me be better, but they also can't make me run back, but they can hold me because fear, it comes. Change is uncomfortable. And sometimes that emotion, there's the fight or the flight. And so we run back to being what we've always been, and we allow the number one tactic of the enemy to keep us from our destiny of moving forward. But when I use the people around me, they become anchors where I can't run back. They can't change me, but they hold me in place. See, ladders of life, this is all of our journey with the God. With the Lord Almighty, ladders of life. I tried to climb it by myself, and I couldn't. Because life, it's horizontal. It's practical. It's people. It's the right here, the right now, using the resources around me. But it's also the vertical, trusting the Word of God, looking to God for my hope, for my answers, for my strength, for my purpose. I've got to have horizontal relationships, which are mentors and teachers and pastors and people that are maybe a little older than me that can speak into my life and can pull me up. But I also have to have my friends and my peers. And when I got to the place where I stopped trying to do it on my own, but I started allowing people to stand around me and support me. See, this ladder, God ultimately wants us to thrive. But man, getting in there is so challenging. And I try to do it for on my own because I protected and I wouldn't let you in. But when I got to a place where it wasn't, I'm by myself, but it's us, it's we. And it wasn't, I'm running from God, but I'm looking to Him for answers, for hope, for direction, for purpose, horizontal and vertical. Everything changes. I need you and you to come here real quick. Yep, come here. I want you to stand. One of you stand right there. I want one of you to stand right here. And when I started using my friends, see, God has put people around us for a purpose. We're not an island. We need each other. You can't change me, but you can encourage me. You understand my hopes, my dreams. We have friendships. We know each other. We're living life together. And as I begin to climb, you begin to stabilize my ladder of life. But you know the truth is, even though you're speaking into my life and we're living life together, I can be honest about maybe thoughts of wanting to give up or wanting to make this choice, and you kind of talk to me and God uses you to give me some practical sense of, don't do that, Nathan, that's a dumb idea. I'll get to a place because this is God's plan for me. And I keep my eyes on Him, but He has also brought you into my circle. But I get to a place where my perspective changes. The truth is, I can't just depend on you as my friends and as my peers. Because man, I'll get to places that you've never been either. As I grow in life, I'll get to places that you don't really have the understanding or knowledge because we're peers and we're living this together. But that's why the horizontal isn't just my friends, it's my pastors, it's my teachers, it's my counselors. I need 2 adults to come up here. I need two teachers, 2 adults, 2 somebody. Let's move. I need you to hold this one right here. And I need you to come over here and hold this one right here. And see, I try to do it on my own and I would fall and I wouldn't be stable. But I start climbing and God's got your purpose, your destiny. Like literally, you keep your eyes on Him. You plus Him's the majority. You're not the exception. God's word is faithful. It's true. You can abide on it. You can stand on it. He won't break it. He's the same yesterday, today, forever. But sometimes in the practical, it's hard to see it. But that's why God uses people around me. And as I began to using my friends and I start climbing, but man, I get to a place that it's that fight or flight. And you guys kind of can still support me. But man, there's only so much life because you have a lot of uncertainties too. But when I start using my teachers and my counselors and my mentors and my pastors and the people that can speak into my life, they begin to stabilize my ladder where I can now have a great foundation, and I can keep my eyes on my purpose and my destiny, and I can trust God. And even though there's a place, I don't have to be afraid, because I know the enemy tries to use fear to keep me, but I got a great base. I got family. I got friends. I'm vulnerable. I don't care what the world thinks about me. I'm putting one foot in front of the other, and I can get to a place where I can reach what God has for me. But I can't get to this place without trusting the people that God's put around me. I can't get to this place without keeping my eyes on what the Word says. We need each other. Peers, parents, teachers, counselors. God's plan for your life is bigger than you could ever imagine. But you've got to find the courage to begin to face the fear of the enemy trying to stop you. And I know 2020 has been so full of uncertainty, but I've been saying this and I stand on it. 2020 has not taken God by surprise. 2020 has not taken him where he has no clue what to do. He has a plan, and it's to prosper you. He has a plan to use what the enemy meant for good, to use it for his glory, and for what the enemy meant for bad, to use for his good. But what we have to do is continue to strive and put one foot in front of the other. And listen, this ladder of life, up, and sometimes you may take a few steps down, and we're going to sometimes miss the mark a little. But what you can't do is settle in your heart where you're not going to stop climbing. No matter what it takes, I'm going to continue to use the resources around me. I'll get off the ladder now so the teachers and the leaders are like, oh my gosh, get that guy down. Does he have insurance? Yes, I do. It's great. Can you guys give them a round of applause, please? You guys can sit down. Guys, basically, listen. Man, I love y'all, man. I have not a clue who any of you are. But I mean that. We need each other. God has taken my life and blown my mind what he can do. I'm no different than any one of you though, man. Like, here's a picture when I was 18 on the left. I know it's bad. That's me on drugs and alcohol and suicidal and self-harming and at rock bottom. And everything that I just shared with you, it's not an idea. It's something that I've trusted. It's actually exactly what the Bible teaches us about being transparent and accountable, confessing, opening up, being honest, being truthful, facing our fears. But you got to apply yourself, hard work, good choices. Faith without works is dead. And ultimately, valuing others. This is what being a follower of Jesus is all about. Loving people, caring about people. Because what you give away, you get to keep. Transparency, accountability, hard work, good choices, and valuing people has changed my life. Guys, if I could tell you anything when this chapel's over, God hasn't been taken by surprise with the storms you're facing. But you have got to allow him to navigate the boat. He's in the boat. My favorite story in the Bible is when the disciples are walking with Jesus and they literally just saw him feed thousands of people from nothing. And they launch out across the water and a storm comes. And Jesus, it says, is in the back of the boat, just asleep. And they freak out. Jesus, wake up, we're gonna die. He wakes up, he looks at the storm, he says, peace, be still. And basically he's like, listen, I have a plan for your life. If you knew my purpose that I had for you, you would understand no storm ever way possible is about to take what I have in store for you. Trust it, I'm in the boat. All of your storms, they're in front of me. He was in the back of the boat. Nothing caught him by surprise. And that's the same for you and I. Guys, but you've got to begin to be real, to be raw, and to be honest, and use the resources around you. It's an honor to be here with you. I would encourage you, if you get a chance and get to a place, if you have any kind of social media, our organization's called Your Life Speaks. We have literally hundreds of hours of videos of life, of content, of things that you can apply. It's that you walk in this thing out called life practically, but also trusting and running after God spiritually. Your Life Speaks or Nathan Harmon. You look at either one of those. I would love for you to be a part of our journey and just inspire you. I know social media is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And I refuse to allow the enemy to continue to use it as a weapon against us to tear us down. So we put out tons of content just to inspire and to speak life. It's an honor. None of you are a mistake. None of you have fallen through the cracks. You're not the exception. You plus God will always be the majority. You have nothing to fear. The enemy surrounds us with uncertainties and fears. God says, I'm putting this table right in front of it, and he will literally show you how real he is. You just got to keep your eyes focused, trust the people around you, and keep climbing your ladder of life.